Time for the Roots and Roots Show with your host, Greg Rashid. Bringing you history and music from the Black American diaspora. The goal of this show is to empower you with information that you can then seed and grow within your community. Now, here's your host, Greg Rashid.
Well, I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the universe. This is Greg Rashid with another edition of the Root and Roots Show. Heard at your convenience on everything from Facebook, YouTube, you name it. But a lot of folks listen every Sunday afternoon, Mountain Time, 3 p.m. in Colorado on KUHSdenver.com, created by the Blitzer himself, the one and only Barrage King, Henry Archuleta. And I want to say hi to all my friends in the Denver and rest of the Colorado region. Just hopefully I'll be back there to visit again sometime, and get in the studio, because I haven't been in the studio there since 5 years, 6 years. Anyway, but I'm here right now in Bangkok, Thailand, enjoying it. You'll hear noise in the background because I'm on the balcony right now. You might hear trucks serving food and rice going past. But we're going to have a good time here, as we always do on this show. And today, I'm going to be interviewing someone, because I've talked about I wanted to interview folks again. And I couldn't do it because of the time difference. But now I figured out a way to do this. What I do is I send questions to authors and people, and then they have someone interview them with those questions. And I am just honored today to have on my program, and he's been on before in the past, and he has a new book out right now of poetry. And I'm talking about Ethel Bert Miller, the great poet, social activist. He just does so much, just amazing. And he's going to be talking about his new book today, When Your Wife Has Tommy John Surgery and Other Baseball Stories. It's on City Point Press. And this is number 2 of his trilogy of baseball books. I interviewed him on his first one. It was If God Invented Baseball. And on the front of that book was a picture of Satchel Paige. And so this is the second one of the trilogy. And I mean, every poem in there I just love. I wish he could do the whole book on my show. But he's going to do 3 poems, and he's going to be interviewed by the Hollywood casting director, who's also going to be on this show being interviewed by me. And she's also an actress, and I'm talking about Shari Misak. So I'm going to right now turn it over to Shari and also Ethelbert as we listen to him talk about his new book of poetry and his love of baseball. So let's hear that right now on the Root and Roots Show.
For the love of the game. After the 4th walk, I turned the television off. I know we will have to move again. John is going back to the minors. What was once his dream was now something I wanted to close my eyes to. It was getting hard to sleep next to him. There are nights when I can no longer rub his arm. His arm keeps a roof over our heads. His arm is hurting, and he knows there are few chances left. I married the man I love, a man who once had control of his pitches and his life. I pray when he comes home tonight, he won't walk away from me. I wrote this poem because I wanted to write some baseball poems from the perspective of a woman who is in love with a baseball player. In this case, I wanted to look at a couple that maybe had been together from, like, say, college, through the minors up to the major leagues, always there to help this person, fulfill his dreams. And all of a sudden what happened, she's watching her husband pitch, and she realized, okay, this is his last chance on his team. And, he's walking everybody. So, you don't have to be the manager, this is not going to be another chance for her husband. And so it's always that thing in terms of the dreams failing and you watching it You're not just watching TV. You're watching your life in terms of your marriage. And you know that when your husband comes home, he's going to be, upset. He's going to be disappointed. He's going to be depressed. What do you do? And so that last line is very important. I pray when he comes home tonight, he won't walk away from me. And you go back to the fact of the first line, he's walking all these baseball players, and so what happens, the walk is the connection between what's happening on the field and what's happening in this marriage. The second poem is a rookie during the season of coronavirus. And when I look at some of the poems I wrote in the book, When Your Wife Has Tommy John Surgery, a number of poems were written during the pandemic. A rookie during the season of coronavirus. 8 years in the minors. Today, my rookie season begins with only shadows in the ballpark. No cheers or boos, just a silent green in front of me, as if this was a high school field trip. After the swollen fingers, bruised thighs, and disappointments, I need more than this. I need to give someone my autograph, throw balls into the stands, and smile at a fan hanging over the dugout rail. How can something end before it begins? I thought baseball was forever. And this is what I was looking at, was during the coronavirus, the beginning of the baseball season. And here's a rookie player, all his life he dreams about being in the major leagues, walking out of that dugout into that field and fans all around. And that's not going to happen, the same way, for example, on the high school level, there are many kids during the pandemic who didn't have the opportunity to go to their senior prom. There were athletes training, very hard to make to that next level from college to become a professional athlete. And that was taken from them because of no games being played. And so I wanted to have that poem that dealt with not just the loss of life, which we've seen because of the pandemic, but also the loss of opportunity, the loss of one's childhood or one's youth. And sometimes that moment, that experience is not going to come back. So if, for example, the next year, his player plays, he's no longer a rookie. And so what happened, that first expression, that rookie year, is not the same. And the last poem I'll read is perhaps one of the more personal poems in When Your Wife Has Tommy John Surgery. And this is a poem, The Negro League. I worked 40 years at Howard. Mule could have done more. Everything in my office was secondhand. I safe surrounded myself with the blues and heavy hitters. Sterling Brown, Albert Murray, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, Leroy Jones, and Josh Gibson. One afternoon after lunch, I sold my soul near the sundial. I was cool Papa Bell before the sun came out. They said I hit like Robert Johnson, but ran like B.B. King. When I was a student, Ma Rainey tried to take me home, which is why I never left. Don't let a blues woman touch the back of your head. Don't let her hear your howling wolf. Control your love like Satchel Paige. If you have to resuscitate, then hesitate. Now, this poem I enjoy writing. In this sense, the Negro League is a historic black college. It's Howard University. So I make that connection between the Negro League and the historic black college. That's why I worked 40 years at Howard. You could have done more. And then I link Sterling Brown, the great Sterling Brown, writer and professor at Howard University, with these other great writers. And then at the end, I add Josh Gibson. So you see this connection between, Negro intellectuals or black intellectuals in the Negro Baseball League represented by Josh Gibson. The line, one afternoon after lunch, I sold my soul near the sundial. It has a lot to do with Howard University mythology, I guess, and folklore. There's a sundial that's on Howard's main campus. And there was all these jokes about what happens every time a virgin co-ed walked past the clock stopped, and then you had to use the sundial. All these sort of things are messed up that you hear in terms of these discussions of what the sundial represented. But there was a guy I went to school with who wrote a really good novel called The Sundial, which was about a college romance. So the sundial is a very symbolic part of Howard University's campus, and I wanted to capture that. But then after, in this poem, it becomes a blues poem. a lot of blues references to B.B. King and Robert Johnson, Ma Rainey, and I wanted to have that sort of blues feeling because of what I was dealing with in terms of my own life and relationship with Howard University. It's sort of this sort of blues relationship that I experienced for 40 years. The beauty of this poem is that I sort of capture the same humor and tone of Satchel Paige, who, has a lot of quotes, but I think Satchel Paige and Yogi Berra, two players, have a lot of quotes. And so I have the poem, and control your love like Satchel Paige. If you have to resuscitate, then hesitate. That's a blues couplet that is, somebody would say, well, that sounds just like something Satchel Paige would say. So when I look at this collection, I'm very happy with what I attempted to do and what I achieved in terms of looking at baseball from a certain perspective and also using baseball as a metaphor to better understand our lives.
So I guess the first question is, how did you fall in love with baseball?
Well, I think when I talk about baseball, it takes me back to my childhood. And so it's something that I fell in love with when I was growing up in the South Bronx. It was something I enjoyed in terms of the neighborhood kids, my friends. I enjoyed at that time collecting baseball cards. I mean, that was my hobby, my pastime. I think it was between baseball cards and comic books that were my hobbies in terms of collecting. And then the opportunity, to play baseball with my friends and then go to some of the games at Yankee Stadium. This is all part of growing up. And so, years later when I'm writing and, you hear people say, write about what you know, or the fact that many people are writing memoirs where they're going back and examining their lives. I realized that when I looked at what I really enjoyed, what I really loved was first sports, because of, raising my children. I just enjoy watching a young person, whether it was my son or my daughter, competing in sports and doing much better than I did in terms of actually playing the sports. And so that love for sports is really important. And then I felt that when my son was in high school and college, I really was into basketball. I was really going to his games and watching him, and really he was my favorite player. But then after he, stopped playing and I stopped going to his games, then I felt bad, really. And so I was looking more and more at baseball and going to baseball games where I would have went to my son's game at Gonzaga or at Weiner outside Philadelphia. I started going to the ballpark. And I think if I look at the last few years, I've probably gone to more baseball games than I had even growing up. And so I like the fact that as I grow older, and this is what I try to capture in the first book, If God Invented Baseball, the poems go from childhood through the aging process. And so you have at the end old timers games. The poems become much more spiritual when you start dealing with your own mortality. And this is why when I talk about baseball, I guess I take a very conservative view. I'm not interested in speeding up the game. I'm 70 and I would like to enjoy my seventh and eighth inning. I don't really want to be sped up. And so I take that sort of traditional approach. I look at when my life changed and I was dismissed from Howard University, I could see that coming. And I remember cleaning out my office at Howard for the help of a friend. And about maybe 2 hours later, I was sitting in the ballpark. And it was very meditative, looking at the field and it was like I was in a whole nother chapter of my life. And baseball helped me make that transition. It was very meditative. I could reflect, I wasn't upset, like how some people are dismissed where you are at work. Someone shows up around 10 o'clock in the morning, hands you a note document for you to sign and then clean out your office by 2. And I saw that happen to many people. And there's, people sad, people crying, people don't know where their next paycheck's going to come from, bills. And it's a very, very terrifying thing. And this is once again how baseball helped me, because what I was looking at was baseball as a metaphor. And I started talking about the fifth inning, where you think that you're going to have a complete game, but then because of the economy or your own health, the game is interrupted. And it's the fifth inning for you, a complete game, and that's it. And, so baseball has enabled me